Have you ever noticed the silence that follows when you stop being easy to control? The smiles fade, the tone shifts, and suddenly your peace feels like a threat to someone's power. They twist your words, disguise guilt as care, and call it love or concern. But it's not about you, it's about control. Stay with me. You need to see what comes next. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. A quiet shift in the air, almost invisible but heavy enough to feel. It's that moment when you stop bending to please. Stop explaining yourself to people who have built their comfort on your compliance. Suddenly, their smiles fade, their tone hardens, the warmth you once knew turns cold, and you wonder, what changed? You didn't become cruel, you simply stopped being easy to control. When people lose their grip on you, they don't always walk away. They adapt. They evolve their methods. Control becomes subtle, soft words, emotional pressure, guilt disguised as care. They will not drag you by the arm. They will push you with silence, with sighs, with looks that whisper, "You owe me." That's how manipulation begins, quiet, calculated, and almost tender. But its purpose is never kindness. It is power. It is the slow erosion of your freedom disguised as love, loyalty, or reason. Some people thrive on control because it fills the void inside them. It makes them feel important, safe, superior. They build invisible strings between themselves and others. And when you cut yours, they panic. They no longer have your emotions to feed on, so they create new games. They guilt trip you. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. They flatter you. You're so good at this. I don't know what I'd do without you. They twist your words, play the victim, manufacture urgency, and every move is meant to make you doubt yourself, to make you surrender without realizing it. But here's what Stoicism teaches. No one can control the mind that governs itself. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Those words cut through every illusion of power. They remind us that control over others is not strength, it is dependence, and dependence, even disguised as dominance, is weakness. True power begins the moment you refuse to be pulled by someone else's emotions, when you stop reacting to every tug on your peace. Imagine manipulation as a game of chess. Every word they say, every sigh, every calculated compliment is a move designed to put you in check, to force a reaction. But the strongest player is not the one who fights every move. It's the one who sees the board clearly and refuses to play. When you stay calm, when you observe instead of reacting, you unmask the illusion. Their tactics lose meaning because their fuel, your emotion, is gone. I remember a man I once knew, someone who had a talent for turning every situation in his favor. He could make wrong seem right, and guilt feel like gratitude. One day, he asked me for a favor, something small but against my principles. I declined politely. He sighed, tilted his head and said, "Wow, I thought we were closer than that." And just like that, I felt it, the sting of guilt, the pressure to explain myself, the instinct to defend. But then I caught it. I paused. I could almost hear Marcus Aurelius whispering, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." I smiled and said calmly, "I know what you're doing." Silence followed. He tried to laugh it off, shifting in his seat, but something in his face had changed. The performance had ended. He realized I wouldn't play my part in his script anymore. That was the last time he tried to manipulate me. That single moment taught me more about strength than 100 arguments ever could. Power doesn't come from proving yourself right. It comes from the quiet refusal to be moved by deception. You don't win by fighting their games, you win by stepping out of them entirely. Most manipulators don't want your agreement, they want your reaction. They don't seek logic, they seek emotional chaos. Guilt, fear, and doubt are their tools. The moment you react, you hand them the keys to your mind. You give them the very power they crave. That's why composure isn't passivity, it's protection. When you stay calm, you make them face their own powerlessness. Think of calmness as armor forged in silence. Every sigh they use to guilt you, every flattery meant to soften you, none of it can pierce through if you've learned to hold your ground. They cannot manipulate what does not respond. They cannot bend what does not move. But it's not easy. Your mind will whisper that you're being cold, that silence is cruel, that perhaps you owe them an explanation. That's the trap. You don't. You owe them honesty, not compliance. Dignity, not submission. The Stoics never taught detachment as distance. They taught it as discipline. To master yourself so completely that no one else can provoke, persuade, or guilt you out of alignment with your reason. When you recognize manipulation for what it is, its illusion dissolves. It's like seeing the strings in a puppet show. You can't unsee them. The words that once pulled at your heart now sound hollow. The guilt that once chained you feels absurd. Their control fades because it never truly belonged to them. It was borrowed from your reaction. So how do you deal with manipulators? First, learn to recognize their methods. If someone makes you feel guilty, pressured, or obligated, pause and ask yourself, is this a request or is this control in disguise? Second, stay calm and firm. Your steadiness is their undoing. The less emotion you reveal, the less leverage they have. Third, refuse to play. You don't need to explain. You don't need to justify. You don't need to prove anything. The moment you stop defending yourself, you take away their oxygen. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And this is the essence of that wisdom. When someone tries to drag you into their storm, stand so still that they see themselves reflected in your calm. Let your silence become the mirror that exposes their noise. In time, you'll see that manipulation only works on those who haven't yet mastered their emotions. The moment you stop explaining, stop apologizing, stop feeling responsible for their moods, you become untouchable. You walk through their tactics like smoke, unaffected, unseen by the hooks that once caught you. And that's the turning point, because the only power they ever had was the one you handed them. When you take it back, not with anger, but with clarity, the game ends. Not with noise, not with confrontation, but with calm certainty. So, the next time someone tries to twist your words to make you feel guilty for your peace, remember this. Their control exists only where your self-awareness ends. Hold your ground. Guard your reason. Let your calm speak the language they can't understand. Because in the end, the greatest freedom is not in walking away, it's in no longer needing to react. The greatest strength is not in striking back, it's in standing still, and the only victory worth having is peace. Moving into the second chapter, imagine this. You've chosen peace over pleasing. You've set your boundaries, spoken your truth, and walked away from the noise. But suddenly, whispers start to travel faster than your footsteps. They come from nowhere, yet they seem to be everywhere. You feel the sting of something invisible, rumors, distortions, half-truths dressed as concern. People look at you differently now, not because of what you've done, but because of what someone said you did. That's how the next game begins. When people can no longer control you, they often reach for your shadow. They can't touch your mind, so they try to stain your name. It's one of the oldest forms of warfare, attacking what you cannot possess. They twist the truth, forge stories, whisper poison into ears that were once open to you. And for what? Not justice, not truth, control. When the manipulator fails to move your emotions directly, they move the world around you. They make others question who you are. They know they can't bend your will anymore, so they go after your reputation, hoping that the weight of isolation will make you surrender. They want you to panic, to defend, to fight shadows, because the moment you react, the game is theirs again. But a Stoic understands something deeper. Truth needs no audience. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won." That single line is freedom carved into stone. Lies only thrive in the space where your peace ends. The more you chase them, the more real they appear. But when you stand still, when you let them echo into silence, they collapse under their own weight. Think of it like mud. Someone throws it at you out of envy, anger, or fear. If you hurl it back, you join the filth. You smear your own hands. But if you stand firm, let it dry, and brush it off, you walk away clean. That's how falsehood works. It sticks only when you touch it. The wise don't wrestle with dirt. They rise above it. I've lived this lesson. There was a time when someone close to me, someone who smiled to my face, decided to rewrite my story behind my back. They spoke softly, never loudly enough to be caught, but just enough to make people wonder. For a while, I burned inside. I wanted to shout my truth, to confront them, to prove I wasn't who they said I was. I drafted explanations in my head, long speeches I would never give. But then something in me shifted. I remembered Epictetus. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And I saw clearly this was another test, not of my name, but of my nature. So I did nothing. I let my actions, my consistency, my quiet speak for me. It wasn't easy. Every rumor feels like a blade to your back. Every false word, a spark against your patience. But the longer I stood still, the clearer everything became. The people who mattered began to see. They noticed the difference between noise and truth. They noticed who was still calm when others were loud. And in time, the one who spread the lies exposed themselves, not because I fought them, but because truth has a way of surfacing on its own. Lies are temporary. They are built on fear and decay. Truth, though silent, endures. It doesn't need applause, defense, or anger. It just needs time. That's the hard part. Waiting without reacting. Watching your own name be carried through mud while you stand still. But that's where mastery is forged. Seneca wrote, "Time discovers truth." And so it does. The person who lives with virtue will always outlast the person who hides behind deceit. This is where your strength is tested. When they attack your character, do you fight back and join their chaos, or do you trust the integrity of your actions? The weak rush to defend themselves with noise. The wise defend themselves with silence, because silence is not surrender, it is strategy, it is clarity. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows that every storm eventually clears and every false word eventually reveals its author. People who rely on deception always reveal more about themselves than about you. When they twist your truth, they expose their own fear. When they exaggerate your flaws, they confess their envy. And when they try to ruin your reputation, they prove that your presence holds more weight than their words ever could. Let them speak. Let them whisper. Let them write their fiction. Your task is not to control their mouths, it's to guard your soul. The Stoics teach us that reputation, like wealth or approval, is not truly ours to control. It belongs to the world's opinion, and the world is fickle. One day it praises you, the next it condemns you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning that others would lie, deceive, and insult, but that none of it could touch his reason. That's the key. Lies can stain perception, but they cannot reach your inner fortress unless you open the gate. So the next time you hear that someone has spoken against you, pause. Don't chase the rumor. Don't explain yourself to those who never ask for your truth directly. Look inward and ask, am I living with integrity? If the answer is yes, then walk on, because truth has no need for panic. It stands like a mountain, unmoved by the storm. There's a quiet kind of revenge that comes from living with dignity, the kind where you outlast their noise. You continue your work, your purpose, your growth. You let your peace confuse them. You let your silence expose them. The Stoic doesn't fight every false word. He lets time, truth, and his own steadiness do the work. And in that restraint, there's power. A power few ever master, the power of indifference. Seneca once wrote, "He who is brave is free." Freedom here doesn't mean the absence of conflict. It means the refusal to be enslaved by the lies of others. You become untouchable not because the world speaks kindly of you, but because your worth no longer depends on what it says. The world's judgment is wind, your peace is stone. So remember this, those who trade in gossip and deceit will always lose, not because you punish them, but because they consume themselves. Lies need constant tending. Truth needs none. Lies burn fast. Truth endures quietly. The only question is, will you waste your life putting out fires others start? Or will you build something that can't be burned? Stand firm. Stay silent. Let the truth rise without your help. The day you stop defending yourself is the day their power over you dies, because their words, no matter how sharp, carry no real weight unless you choose to carry them. The Stoic knows peace is the final victory and silence the loudest proof of all. Advancing to the third chapter, the air grows heavier. You can feel it, can't you? That quiet tension that settles when someone who once tried to control you finally realizes they can't. They stop shouting, they stop pushing, and instead they start performing. Suddenly, you're not the villain in their eyes, you're the villain in their story. They rewrite the past, twist every truth, and place themselves at the center of the tragedy. They play the victim, and they play it well. You see, when they can't control your choices, they'll try to control your image. If they can't bend your will, they'll bend perception. They'll cry louder, act softer, and wait for sympathy to come to their rescue. And here's the cruel genius of it. The more you try to explain, the more guilty you look. The more you defend yourself, the more you appear defensive. Suddenly, they're the fragile one who's been hurt, and you're the cold one who doesn't understand. It's a trap built on reaction, and that's exactly why the Stoics teach the opposite. Epictetus once said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." That's the whole game right there. They need you to react. They need you to play the role they've written for you. Without your response, their story has no stage, their sorrow no audience. Every false victim thrives on drama, and silence is their starvation. Now imagine this like a theater performance. The lights are bright, the crowd leans in. On stage, they stand trembling, voice quivering, playing innocent while painting you as the storm. And you, if you step forward to argue, you join the act. You give their illusion life. But if you refuse to walk on stage, if you stay in the shadows and let them perform alone, the crowd starts to see. The cracks in their act begin to show. The lines don't add up. The emotion feels rehearsed. That's when truth begins its quiet return. I once dealt with someone who had perfected this art. Every time they crossed a line and I called it out, the same thing happened. They'd shrink, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I can't believe you'd say that to me." In a single breath, they became the wounded one, and I became the aggressor. The first time I explained myself. The second time I argued. The third time I stopped. When they performed, I stayed silent. When they cried injustice, I didn't defend. I just stood still. And you know what happened? The people watching began to notice the pattern. The same story, the same tears, the same script. Eventually they saw it for what it was, a play. That's when I learned the most important lesson of all. The truth doesn't need your defense. It needs your patience. The more you chase lies, the more you validate them. But if you stand in quiet dignity, time does your speaking for you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it." In other words, the storm is only as strong as the meaning you give it. Don't give meaning to manipulation. Don't dignify deceit with a reaction. False victims feed on empathy they haven't earned. They exaggerate, they omit, they reshape reality so that others will rush to rescue them. And when you try to expose the lie, you look cruel, impatient, or heartless. That's the paradox. They attack you while making you feel like the attacker. So what do? You do what the Stoics have done for centuries. You step back, you observe, and you let their own contradictions do the work. You let time be the judge and reason be your defense. Seneca once said, "Time heals what reason cannot." But in this context, time also reveals what deceit cannot hide. Every falsehood begins to unravel when it's no longer fed. Lies need attention, like fire needs air. Take away your breath and the blaze suffocates. Refuse to explain, refuse to fight, refuse to fix their perception. You're not responsible for the stories people tell to protect their pride. I remember the shift that happened inside me once I stopped fighting back. At first, the silence felt unbearable. It felt like surrender. But slowly I realized it wasn't surrender. It was sovereignty. It was the calm confidence of someone who no longer needed to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding them. And then something remarkable happened. The same people who once believed the act started to notice the pattern. The person who cried victim became the one no one believed. Because truth, no matter how long it hides, always finds its way to the surface. That's the beauty of Stoic endurance. You don't need to expose anyone. They will expose themselves by repeating the same play too many times. The crowd grows tired, the curtain falls, and there you stand, unmoved, unbroken, unprovoked. But to get there, you must master one thing, your peace. Peace that cannot be baited, disturbed, or stolen. Emotional control is not coldness, it's wisdom. The Stoics knew that power doesn't belong to the loudest, but to the calmest. The one who sees through the illusion without needing to tear it down. The one who knows that time, truth, and composure are the only allies that never betray. So when they twist your words, when they cry in front of others and make you the villain, remember this. You don't owe the world an explanation. You owe yourself stillness. The moment you argue with deceit, you step into its world. The moment you stand silent in truth, you rise above it. There's a saying I once heard in the teachings of reason: reality needs no defense. If what's true lives in you, it will endure beyond gossip, beyond slander, beyond performance. What dies quickly is the act that depends on applause. And that's why those who pretend to be victims are always chasing new audiences. You don't need to fight their lies, you only need to outlast them, because the truth, like a steady flame, doesn't burn brighter by shouting, it survives by staying lit in silence. Let your calm be your statement. Let your actions be your argument. Let their stories decay in the absence of your attention. In time, their mask will slip. It always does. And when it does, people will remember the one who never lost control, who never lashed out, who never needed to scream to prove their side. They will remember your composure. So, hold your peace close. Protect it like the rare treasure it is. And when the performance begins again, as it always will, watch without emotion. The show will end on its own. The truth always outlasts the performance, and that, my friend, is the quiet victory they'll never understand. Entering the 4th chapter, imagine this. You've found your footing. You've begun to stand on your own, no longer swayed by guilt, no longer chained by approval. But just as your balance steadies, something shifts around you. Conversations grow colder. Familiar eyes avoid yours. Friends who once stood beside you begin to drift away, not because of what you've done, but because of what they've been told. It's subtle at first, almost invisible, like a slow fog rolling in. But make no mistake, this is not coincidence, it's orchestration. When those who once tried to control you realize they can't reach your mind, they aim for your circle, and their favorite weapon is isolation. They won't confront you directly, that would require courage. Instead, they move quietly, whispering doubts, twisting stories, planting questions in the minds of others. Their goal is simple: separate you from the people who remind you of your worth. If they can't control you, they'll try to make you doubt yourself by cutting you off from the warmth that sustains you. They'll make you feel like an outsider in your own life, hoping the loneliness will soften your defenses, because isolation is how control begins again. Through the ache of being misunderstood, through the silence of those you once trusted. I've seen it happen more than once. The ones who thrive on power can't stand independence. It mirrors everything they've failed to master within themselves. So, they turn people against you, friends, co-workers, even family, not with open hostility, but with subtle poison. I don't know if you can really trust them. Something about them feels different lately. Tiny seeds, dropped in small doses until suspicion grows like weeds between you and those who once stood close. And while you're busy defending yourself, they're standing in the background, watching the connections unravel. But this tactic isn't new. It's as ancient as fear itself. Even Seneca warned against it centuries ago when he said, "Associate only with those who improve you. Avoid those who would pull you down." That's not just advice, it's armor. It's the Stoics' way of choosing light over illusion, clarity over confusion. Because when you surround yourself with people of substance, those who value truth over gossip, no manipulator can break through that fortress. They can only hover outside, wasting their breath. I remember once someone I knew began this quiet campaign. It started with harmless comments, a laugh here, a raised eyebrow there. You know, I'm not sure if they're being honest with you. I think they've changed. And I, naive at the time, tried to reason, to explain, to prove my integrity. But every explanation became another thread for them to pull. The more I tried to fight the rumors, the more real they seemed. It was like wrestling smoke. It only made the air thicker. So I stopped. I focused on what mattered. Consistency. I stayed grounded. I let my actions speak in the language of time. And slowly, something shifted again. The people who truly knew me, who had seen me through silence and storms, began to see through the lies. They noticed the gaps in the storyteller's tale. They realized that truth doesn't need a campaign. It reveals itself through presence, not persuasion. And one by one, those who were meant to stay came back, and those who weren't simply drifted away for good. That's the quiet gift hidden inside betrayal. It filters your circle for you. Here's the truth. Those who fear your independence will always try to isolate you. They know that solitude can become despair if you let it. But what they forget is that solitude, when met with discipline, becomes strength. A Stoic doesn't fear being alone, because solitude is where clarity is born. It's in the quiet that you hear your own mind again. Free from noise, free from manipulation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's the counterattack. When they try to isolate you, retreat inward. Make your mind your fortress. There will be moments when loneliness feels unbearable, when it seems like everyone believes the falsehood. You'll want to chase explanations, to reclaim those who turned away. Don't. Chasing the lost distracts you from those who remain. The ones who truly know you won't be swayed by whispers. They'll notice you're calm. They'll see that you didn't fight dirt with dirt. They'll recognize the quiet dignity of someone who refused to bend. And those who believed the lies, let them. They were never your people. They were borrowed time. The Stoics taught that what is outside your control belongs to the realm of fate. Whether others misunderstand you, whether they walk away, whether your name is twisted in rooms you'll never enter, none of that defines your virtue. Only your reaction does. That's where freedom lives, not in how many stand beside you, but in how firmly you stand within yourself. The moment you realize that, their weapon loses its edge. So when isolation comes, and it will, meet it with stillness, not fear. Use it as time to rebuild. Strengthen the relationships that are rooted in respect, not convenience. Nurture those rare few who see you as you are, not as others describe you. And if there's no one around for a while, stand with your principles. Let them keep you company. Solitude with integrity is far better than company with deceit. Seneca reminded us that the wise man is self-sufficient, not because he wishes to live apart from all men, but because he is content with himself. That is the antidote to manipulation, to become content enough within that no one's abandonment can shatter you. When you no longer need constant reassurance, no one can use it against you. Over time, truth rebuilds, everything lies tried to break. The bonds that were real will return, stronger than before, purified by distance. And those who vanished were never allies, only placeholders. Let them go without resentment. They freed space in your life for something real. Here's the paradox. They tried to isolate you, but in doing so, they handed you back to yourself. They forced you into the quiet where strength is born. They made you realize that peace isn't found in the crowd, it's found in clarity. So stay calm. Stay connected to truth, to reason, to yourself. Keep your circle small but solid. Don't chase those who turn away. Their distance is your protection. The world will always have people who divide and distort, but real relationships, like real character, don't crumble under rumor. When they try to make you feel alone, remember this: you are never truly isolated when you stand in truth. Because truth has a gravity of its own. It pulls the right people back to you and pushes the wrong ones away. And that is how you win, not by shouting louder, not by proving, but by standing still long enough for the false to fall away and the real to remain. At this stage of the journey, the attacks grow quieter but sharper. They no longer shout to break your spirit. They whisper to make you doubt it. You can feel it, can't you? That soft, unsettling voice that creeps in after every decision you make, asking, "Are you sure?" It doesn't come from honesty or care. It comes from control. When they can no longer bend your will, they'll try to bend your confidence. It's the subtlest weapon they have, and the deadliest. They won't come at you with open hostility. No, that would be too obvious. Instead, they'll dress their doubt as concern. They'll question your choices, not your character, because that's how you begin to question both. That's risky, don't you think? Are you sure that's the right move? I'm just trying to help. Their tone will sound gentle, but their intent is sharp. It's never about guidance. It's about planting hesitation where there was once conviction. Because if they can make you second-guess yourself, they don't need to control you. You'll do it for them. Picture this: you're standing at the edge of a bridge. You know it's strong. You built it yourself. You've walked this path 100 times. But someone steps beside you and whispers, "What if it collapses?" At first, you laugh it off, but then they say it again and again. Slowly, your heartbeat quickens. The bridge hasn't changed, but your mind has. That's how doubt works. It doesn't destroy the structure. It destroys your faith in it, and soon you find yourself paralyzed on solid ground. That's what manipulators count on. Not your weakness, but your hesitation. They know that once you start explaining yourself, you've already handed them your power. Because every justification you give says, "You have the right to question me," and they feed on that. Epictetus said, "A person's worth is not measured by the opinions of others." Let that truth settle deep into your bones. Your confidence is not up for debate. It's not something to be borrowed from approval or restored by praise. It lives within reason, and reason alone. When your choices are born from clarity, no one else's disbelief can alter their strength. True confidence doesn't roar, it stands. Quietly, steadily, unshaken. I once knew someone who had a habit of questioning everything I did. Every idea, every move, every plan. They'd raise an eyebrow and ask, "Are you sure?" At first, I took it as genuine curiosity. I explained myself over and over again, thinking they'd finally see my logic. But they never did, because that wasn't their goal. They weren't seeking truth. They were seeking control. Each explanation I gave made me smaller, each defense another crack in my confidence, until one day I stopped. They asked, "Are you sure?" And I simply said, "Yes." Nothing more, no justification, no need for proof, just quiet certainty. And do you know what happened? The silence between us grew heavy. They shifted, uncomfortable, because confidence doesn't argue, it ends the conversation. When you stop feeding their doubt, you take away their influence. That's when I realized something powerful. Doubt is not always an enemy, it's a test. A mirror showing you whether your conviction is rooted in others or in yourself. The Stoics never taught us to be loud about our certainty. They taught us to build it from logic, from reflection, from the stillness of knowing that your mind is your own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Stand firm like a rock against which the waves continually break, but it remains unmoved." That's not poetry, that's instruction. So, when someone questions your path, pause, but not to explain. Pause to remember. Did you choose this through reason or impulse? If through reason, stand firm. You owe no one a defense. Their doubt belongs to them. Don't make it your burden to carry. The moment you try to convince, you step away from clarity and into chaos. This world will always test your faith in yourself. Friends, family, strangers, they'll project their own fears onto your journey. Some will call it advice, others will call it love. But look closer. Does it build you or does it bind you? Seneca once said, "It is the power of the mind to be unconquerable." That's where your protection lies, not in being unchallenged, but in being unshaken when you are. The truth is, most people who question your confidence aren't doing it to help you. They do it because your certainty reminds them of what they lack. Your calm offends their chaos. Your decisiveness threatens their comfort. And rather than face their own uncertainty, they'd rather make you question yours. It's easier to make you doubt than to make themselves grow. So how do you handle people like that? First, recognize the tactic. The moment you feel the sting of unnecessary doubt, see it for what it is, a move in the game. Don't react. Don't explain. Second, stop over-justifying. Your decisions don't need approval to be valid. The more you defend them, the less sure you sound, even to yourself. And finally, trust your process. Confidence is not arrogance. It's the quiet knowing that your reasoning was sound, that your intention was honest, and that your peace doesn't depend on consensus. When you live by reason, not reaction, you become untouchable. They can question, they can scoff, they can whisper, but none of it reaches you. Because you no longer build your certainty on their acceptance, you build it on truth. I won't lie to you. There will be times when their words echo longer than you'd like. Times when you'll replay their tone in your mind, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were right. That's normal. But remember, Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing. It's about mastering what those feelings lead to. Let their doubt pass through you like wind through an open hand. Don't grip it. Don't hold it. Just let it go. There is a peace that comes from standing firm in silence. The kind of peace that unnerves those who live on manipulation, because when they whisper and you don't flinch, they see what they can't reach. Someone who answers only to their own reason. Someone who no longer asks for permission to believe in themselves. In the end, confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the decision to keep walking through it. When they question your steps, keep moving. When they call you reckless, smile. When they ask, "Are you sure?" let your answer be calm, steady, and final. Yes, because those who challenge your confidence only have the power you give them, and once you stop giving it, their voice fades into silence. Trust your mind. Stand firm. Never let another person's uncertainty become the echo that guides your life. Moving into the 6th chapter, this is where the storm begins to test your calm. When they realize they can't control you with logic or guilt, they reach for something older, darker, and far more primal. They start provoking your emotions. They say things not to communicate, but to cut, to make you flinch, to make you burn. They'll insult, mock, and distort your words until your pulse quickens and your mind clouds. They don't want a resolution. They want a reaction. Because if you lose control, they regain power. That's the game. They know the rules well. The moment you raise your voice, they've won. The moment you let anger speak for you, They step back, wipe their hands and say, "See? I told you they were unreasonable." They play calm while you burn, pretending to be the rational one as they stand over the chaos they caused. You become the villain in their script, and they walk away as the victim in yours. It's an old trick, timeless, effective, and utterly hollow. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." Those words carry the weight of centuries because they cut through every manipulation in a single truth. You cannot control how others behave, only how you respond. And when you master that response, you take back everything they tried to steal. Think of your emotions as fire and their words as wind. The more you feed the flame, the higher it rises, the hotter it burns, and the less you can see through the smoke. But what happens when the wind blows and there's no fire to move? Nothing. The storm passes, the air clears, and the wind exhausts itself. That's what calmness does. It starves the chaos. I remember once someone tried this with me, a master of provocation. Every word they spoke was bait. They exaggerated, they twisted, they reached into the past and pulled out mistakes I'd long since made peace with. Every instinct in me screamed to fight back, to set the record straight. I could feel the heat rising behind my ribs, but then I paused. I saw it for what it was, a test, not of my words, but of my self-control. So instead of snapping, I smiled and said, "Interesting perspective." Nothing more. The silence that followed was sharp. They blinked, unsure what to do. The fire they wanted didn't come, and in that moment, I understood. Calmness isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's the art of refusing to be baited into someone else's chaos. It's standing in the middle of the storm and realizing that stillness itself is power. You see, anger is expensive. It drains you, exposes you, and hands your control over to those who least deserve it. Epictetus wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." He wasn't preaching serenity for show. He was describing survival. Because the one who provokes you doesn't want your understanding, they want your reaction. They want to make you small, to watch you lose what they already lost, the ability to stay composed. And when you understand this, you stop being a participant and become an observer. You start to see their words not as attacks, but as evidence of their own unrest. The person who tries to make you explode is only revealing their own inability to stay still. Their taunts are confessions, their noise a sign of weakness. The calm mind sees this and stays silent, not because it's afraid, but because it refuses to descend. There's a line I keep close from Seneca. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. That's the heart of Stoic restraint. It's not suppression, it's sovereignty. It's choosing to remain unmoved while others unravel. And when you live that way, your very presence becomes disarming. The one who tries to provoke you feels it. They sense your composure and grow restless because nothing frustrates chaos more than someone who refuses to join it. So how do you handle these moments? First, recognize the game. If someone's words are designed to sting, ask yourself, do they want a dialogue or a display? Most of the time, they're not seeking truth, they're seeking spectacle. Don't perform for them. Second, manage the rise. The body reacts faster than the mind, so when you feel the heat coming, breathe. Let the emotion pass through you without anchoring. You are not your reaction, you are the stillness before it. And finally, walk away when needed. Not every battle honors your strength. Some are designed only to waste it. Remember this, emotional provocation is the last refuge of the powerless. When they can't move your reason, they'll try to move your pulse. Don't let them. Stay grounded in what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but disciplined detachment. It's the ability to feel fully, yet remain sovereign, to see the insult, the mockery, the chaos, and respond with clarity instead of anger. Because anger makes you predictable, calm makes you untouchable. The Stoic doesn't deny emotion, he directs it. He lets rage dissolve into understanding, frustration into patience, insult into indifference. Every time you master that transformation, you rise higher than those who seek to drag you down. I've watched people waste entire days fighting with ghosts, words flung in anger, messages typed in heat, arguments that change nothing but their peace. I've been that person too. But the day I learned to pause, to take one breath before responding, I changed the entire rhythm of my life. You can feel it when it happens. The world slows down, the noise loses its grip, and you begin to see that every provocation is a chance to practice mastery. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself each morning that others would be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful. Yet he said, I cannot be injured by any of them, for no one can implicate me in what is shameful. That's the discipline, to expect the noise and remain clean. To let them throw what they will and still walk away with your composure intact. So when someone tries to get under your skin, when their words are sharp and their tone invites war, remember this: your silence is not surrender, it's supremacy. Let them exhaust themselves. Let them reveal their dependence on your reaction. You, meanwhile, remain unmoved. Observe, breathe, detach. In the end, the strongest person in any room is not the loudest. It's the one whose peace cannot be provoked. The one who knows that calmness is not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. The one who understands that when you choose not to react, you don't lose the battle, you end it. Stay calm, stay still. Let them throw their words into the wind, for the wind always returns empty-handed. And remember, your emotions belong to you. Guard them well, for the world is full of those who would spend them for their own gain. The fire only burns if you feed it. So keep your flame steady, your mind clear, and your soul beyond reach. That is real power. That is freedom. Entering the 7th chapter, you start to notice something strange. You take a step forward, and almost like an echo, someone else takes the same step. You make a move, and they follow. You share an idea, and before long it comes back to you, wearing a different face, a different tone, but your fingerprints are still all over it. At first, you brush it off as coincidence, but soon you realize it's not coincidence at all. It's imitation, one of the quietest, strangest tactics used by those who can't control you. When they fail to overshadow you, they begin to mirror you. It's unsettling, isn't it, to see your thoughts, your habits, your way of being reflected in someone else's shadow. You wonder if it's flattery or theft, admiration or envy. But here's the truth, it's none of those. It's desperation. When people can't defeat you, they'll try to become you. Because in their mind, if they can't create your strength, they'll settle for wearing the mask of it. They mimic your rhythm, your tone, your discipline, hoping to absorb your success without paying the cost of effort. But imitation is a fragile thing. It looks like power, but it's hollow. It looks alive, but it's only reflection. Like a shadow that follows the light, it moves when you move, but it can never create its own glow. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." The Stoics understood this deeply. You are not what you do, you are the reason behind why you do it. You can copy a gesture, a word, a style, but you cannot copy intention. You cannot steal spirit. What they imitate is form. What they lack is substance. I remember someone who did this to me once. Every move I made, they mirrored. Every goal I reached, they reached for the same. When I changed my habits, they did too. At first it felt invasive, almost personal, as if my ideas were being stolen one by one. It frustrated me. I wanted to call it out, to confront it. But then I paused and saw it differently. If someone spends their energy copying you, they're already behind you. They're not leading, they're chasing. And when you see it like that, you stop feeling anger, you feel clarity. So I did something unexpected. I changed everything. I shifted my rhythm, took a path that didn't fit the pattern they were following. And just like that, they froze. Without my direction to mirror, they didn't know how to move. That's when it hit me. Imitation isn't flattery. It's exposure. It reveals who's thinking and who's just waiting to be told how to think. The Stoics would call this a test of composure. The question is not, why are they copying me? It's, why does it disturb me? Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The imitation of others isn't your concern. Your focus should never be on guarding your ideas, but on guarding your peace. Because your value doesn't lie in what others repeat, it lies in what they can't replicate. Your discipline, your endurance, your truth. You see, imitation is the refuge of those who fear originality. It's easier to wear someone else's armor than to forge your own. Easier to mimic confidence than to face insecurity. But what they don't understand is that copying someone's path never leads to the same destination. Because the Stoic path is inward. It's not what you build outside that makes you unshakable, it's what you've conquered within. They can follow your footsteps, but they can't follow your growth. Let them copy, let them take your words, your methods, even your mannerisms. None of it touches the source. The flame that lights your path is internal. It's fueled by trials they've never faced, by discipline they've never known. They can stand in your light, but they can't become your fire. I've learned that the best response to imitation is not confrontation, it's evolution. Keep growing, keep moving, because the faster you evolve, the harder it becomes for others to keep up. While they're busy repeating your last chapter, you're already writing the next. Don't let their mimicry distract you from your mastery. The Stoics taught that progress isn't proven by comparison, but by consistency. So stay consistent, keep rising. Let their shadow stretch behind you until it disappears in the distance. There's something else worth remembering. Imitation reveals dependence. It shows who's watching, who's waiting, who's afraid to lead. But the Stoic doesn't live to be followed. The Stoic lives to be true. Authenticity is not a performance. It's the refusal to bend your essence to fit someone else's script. Seneca wrote that the mind trained in virtue becomes its own model. It no longer needs examples because it becomes one. That's what you're building, something others can't copy because it's not built on show, but on substance. And yet, you'll still feel it sometimes, that sting when someone presents your ideas as their own, when they take your efforts and wear them like a crown. In that moment, breathe. Remember, the world sees patterns. It recognizes truth in the long run. What's copied fades quickly. What's real endures. A counterfeit coin glitters for a moment, but only the genuine one survives the test of time. So, how do you handle people like this? First, stop worrying about them. Every moment you spend watching them follow you is a moment you lose leading yourself. Second, keep evolving. The Stoic warrior never stands still. Growth is the way you leave imitators behind. And third, remember this simple truth. They copy because they doubt. They doubt their path. their strength, their voice. They mimic yours because they haven't yet found their own. When you understand that, compassion replaces irritation. You realize they're not your rivals, they're your reminders of how far you've come. They chase the surface while you move from depth. They chase your steps while you move from principle. In time, the noise fades, the copies crumble, the trends die, but character, real, hard-earned, tested character, remains. You cannot imitate that. You cannot download it, rehearse it, or steal it. It is forged one quiet decision at a time, through nights of doubt and mornings of resolve. So, if you find yourself being copied, smile. It means you're ahead. It means your light is visible. And your job now isn't to dim it. It's to keep it burning so bright that no shadow can pretend to be you. Because in the end, they can imitate your steps, but they'll never match your soul. Shadows fade. Light endures. And no one can replace what makes you, you. Advancing to the 8th chapter, you start to see a truth few ever want to admit. Some of the people around you are not waiting for your rise. They're waiting for your fall. You can feel it in the pauses between their compliments. You can hear it in the faint tension behind their laughter. They smile when you speak of your dreams. They nod when you share your goals. But behind those gestures hides a quiet wish that you stumble, that you fail just enough to remind them they're not behind, that your light flickers so they can feel warm again in their own shadows. It's a hard thing to see, but you'll see it once you begin to grow. Not everyone clapping for you wants to see you win. Some clap because they believe you'll eventually prove them right by falling. They disguise doubt as care. Are you sure that's a good idea? You've been doing well, but don't get too confident. Their words drip with false concern, but what they really mean is, I hope you fall soon enough to make me comfortable again. This is the hidden envy that Marcus Aurelius warned us about when he said, waste no more time on what others think of you. Their approval is a leash, and your freedom offends them. Because when you begin to move beyond the limits they accepted for themselves, you remind them of their own stagnation. You become a mirror, and not everyone can stand the reflection of what they could have been. I once knew someone like that. They were always nearby, always smiling, always supportive. But every success I had came with a subtle shift in their tone. They'd say, "You're really lucky," instead of, "You've worked hard." They'd warn me not to expect too much, as if failure was already scheduled. And the moment I faced a setback, their reaction wasn't empathy, it was satisfaction. See, I told you it wouldn't be easy. It was then I realized they were never cheering for me. They were waiting to feel right about their own fear of trying, waiting for my fall to prove that success isn't worth the climb. That's when I stopped performing for them. I stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped seeking their understanding. Because Epictetus said it best. Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall. Those words hit like stone, sharp, cold, freeing. Why should I spend my strength proving to those who secretly root against me that I can rise? My purpose was never theirs to validate. Think of it like a storm and a tree. The weak tree bends and breaks when the wind comes. But a deeply rooted tree, one whose roots run into discipline, clarity, and reason, doesn't flinch. The storm howls, but the tree holds. Those waiting for you to fail are the wind. They make noise, they push against you, they try to shake your calm, but they can't uproot you unless you let them. And that's where Stoic wisdom becomes more than theory, it becomes armor. When Marcus wrote about remaining unmoved by external praise or criticism, he wasn't speaking in riddles, he was describing balance. A Stoic doesn't rise with applause or fall with doubt. He walks his path with even steps, eyes fixed on his reason, not the crowd. The truth is, those who hope for your failure reveal more about themselves than about you. Their envy is not about your success, it's about their surrender. They see your growth as a mirror showing everything they refuse to face. They quit on their own potential long ago, and every one of your victories reopens that wound. When you shine, it burns their comfort. When you persist, it exposes their excuses. That's why they smirk when you fall. They feel relief. Your failure becomes their justification. But here's where you reclaim your power: by succeeding quietly, by letting your progress be the answer they cannot debate. When they whisper doubts, you build. When they watch, you move. When they expect you to fall, you grow roots deeper than they can see. You stop performing for the audience and start performing for the purpose. Because success built on inner strength is not a show, it's a discipline. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Freedom isn't the absence of obstacles, it's the absence of dependence on how others see you. You cannot live freely while constantly measuring your worth by the noise of others. Their doubt is not your concern. Their approval is not your reward. The only thing that matters is that your actions are rooted in virtue, not validation. I learned that silence is the most unsettling response to those who wait for you to fail. When you don't react, when you don't explain, defend, or boast, you rob them of their narrative. Because people who expect your downfall depend on one thing: your reaction to the fall. They want the spectacle, the story, the proof that you're human enough to break. But when you rise again, calm and unbothered, their hunger turns to discomfort. Your resilience ruins their expectations. There's a quiet kind of power in this. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. It's the strength of someone who's already walked through doubt, already faced storms, and now understands some people will only love you when you stay small. Don't. Outgrow them anyway. Let their silence be your applause. When you stop chasing approval, you start attracting peace. And peace is something they can't stand, because it's the one thing they can't fake. They can copy your habits, mimic your words, even mirror your confidence, but they can't replicate the calm of someone who no longer seeks validation. That kind of stillness exposes every mask around you. So the next time you sense that silent hope for your failure, don't fight it, don't prove anything. Let them wait. Let them watch. And while they do, build higher, grow stronger, move forward. Because nothing unsettles those who expect your fall more than watching you rise again, quietly, consistently, and without resentment. In the end, you'll find that success is not about proving them wrong, it's about proving yourself right. It's not about winning over those who doubt you. It's about walking so firmly in your purpose that their opinions can't keep pace. Let them talk, let them wait, let them whisper, because you have work to do. You have a storm to outlast, roots to deepen, and a path that's yours alone. And when the wind's quiet, when the noise fades, you'll still be standing, calm, steady, unbroken. Because nothing terrifies those who hope for your failure more than your peace after every storm. But when the storm finally passes, something deeper begins to unfold. You start to see that the real battle was never out there, it was always within. The world may have tested you through lies, envy, and manipulation, but every trial was pointing toward one truth. Control has never been about others, only about yourself. What follows is not survival, it's transformation. It's the moment you stop reacting to the world and begin mastering your place in it. Because the war outside ends the moment you learn to govern your mind. From here, the journey turns inward, not to hide from the world, but to rise above it. As the dust begins to settle, this is where the true work begins. You've seen their tactics, the manipulation, the lies, the provocation, the quiet sabotage disguised as friendship. You've learned how they move in shadows, trying to bend your emotions and weaken your peace. But now comes the harder task. Rebuilding yourself into someone who cannot be shaken, no matter how loud the world gets. At this stage, it's not about them anymore. It's about you, your structure, your mind, your inner fortress. Because once you've seen how easily people can twist truth, you must build something they cannot touch. And that fortress is not built of walls or distance. It's built of discipline, of clarity, of silence. Imagine this for a moment. You stand at the center of your own life like a city surrounded by high walls. Outside, there is noise, rumors, envy, the endless pull of opinions. But inside, there is order, stillness, the hum of reason guiding every movement. That's what it means to build the fortress within, not to escape the world, but to master yourself so completely that no one else can enter uninvited. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He wasn't speaking of withdrawal, he was describing strength. Because when your peace depends on silence, it can be taken from you. But when your peace lives inside your reason, it cannot be touched. This is where strength stops being a mask and becomes a way of being. The Stoics understood that true power begins in stillness. They believed that a man who masters his own reactions controls the entire battlefield, because the real war was never against others, it was always against the chaos within. The chaos that makes you chase approval, overthink rejection, and waste energy fighting shadows that never existed. The world outside is unpredictable, but the mind, your mind, can be governed. It can be ruled with order and clarity if you are willing to train it. I once met someone who lived this truth better than anyone I've known. His name was Elias. He wasn't loud, wasn't forceful, never raised his voice. But when he entered a room, everything slowed down. People listened. Not because he demanded attention, but because he carried a kind of calm that made others question their own noise. One day, I asked him how he stayed so centered when surrounded by so much arrogance and competition. He smiled and said, "I don't let the outside world decide what kind of day I'm having." That line never left me. Because that's the essence of Stoicism. To live as if your mind were a fortress guarded by discipline. To protect your peace not through isolation, but through command. When others throw chaos, you respond with order. When they provoke, you respond with clarity. When they betray, you respond with understanding, not because they deserve it, but because you refuse to descend. It's not easy. Building that fortress is slow work. It begins the moment you decide to stop explaining yourself to everyone who misunderstands you. It grows when you stop chasing those who left because they couldn't control you. Every time you choose reason over reaction, you add another stone to the wall. And one day, without realizing it, you'll look around and see that the noise still exists, but it can't reach you anymore. Seneca said, "He who conquers himself is the mightiest warrior." That's what this stage of your journey is about, conquest. Not over others, but over the restless self. Over the part of you that still needs to prove, to argue, to defend. Because that part is what makes you vulnerable. The manipulator can't touch you Once you no longer need their approval. The liar loses power the moment you stop chasing their version of truth. Even betrayal loses its sting when you understand that people's choices reveal their character, not your worth. But the fortress within is not a cold place. It's not built from bitterness or detachment. It's built from quiet strength. The Stoics didn't run from emotion, they refined it. They understood that anger can be shaped into action, grief into wisdom, love into clarity. Your emotions are not enemies, they're wild horses. When guided by reason, they carry you further than fear ever could. So what does it mean practically to build this inner stronghold? It starts with awareness. Each morning before you step into the chaos of the world, remind yourself, today I will meet people who are driven by envy, fear, and ignorance. But they cannot harm me unless I let them. This was Marcus's morning ritual, a daily rehearsal of resilience. Prepare your mind before the world tests it. That's the discipline that separates the Stoic from the reactive. Then cultivate silence. Not the kind that hides, but the kind that sees. Learn to pause before speaking, to breathe before replying. In that brief silence, power gathers. It's in that space that reason takes the throne back from emotion. Every time you resist the urge to react, you remind yourself, I am the master here, not the puppet. Lastly, commit to integrity, because no fortress can stand on deceit. Your peace must come from alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions. When those three are one, you become immovable. People can accuse, doubt, or betray, but they can't break something built on truth. Over time, you'll begin to notice something. The same people who once tried to manipulate, provoke, or undermine you will start to act differently. They won't admit it, but your calm will unsettle them. Your lack of reaction will expose their noise. They'll look for cracks, for anger, for signs that they still matter to your peace, but they'll find none. And in that silence, they'll realize you've become something they can't touch. That's when you'll understand what real strength is. It's not dominance, it's not coldness, it's self-command. The Stoic doesn't shout his power, he embodies it. His composure becomes his language, his restraint becomes his roar, and the world, confused by this quiet force, eventually adjusts. People either rise to your level or fade from your circle. But you stay steady, because you've built something they cannot imitate. A mind governed by reason, a soul ruled by virtue. This is where you begin to live freely, no longer shaped by who hurt you, no longer defined by who left, no longer reacting to every gust of wind that passes through your life. You've built your fortress, you've found your ground, and from this place of strength, the next step reveals itself, not to retreat from life, but to re-enter it, stronger, wiser, untouchable. Because the goal was never to escape the storm. It was to become the kind of person who can walk through it, calm, steady, and unbroken. Moving deeper into this path, this is where silence becomes your sharpest weapon. You've built the walls of your inner fortress. Now you must learn to guard it. Because strength is not only in standing tall, it's in knowing when to stay still. The next step of mastery is not to fight louder, but to move quieter. The world will keep testing you, whispering, pulling, trying to provoke your response. But the power you seek now lives in restraint, in the art of speaking less and observing more. Imagine a man standing at the edge of a crowded street. People shout, argue, and demand his attention, but he doesn't answer. He listens, he watches, and in that stillness, he sees everything. He sees the ones moved by pride, the ones driven by fear, and the few who are truly free. That's what silence gives you, the ability to see through the fog of noise, to read truth in a world that hides behind words. Seneca once said, "It is quality rather than quantity that matters in speech." He was reminding us that wisdom rarely shouts, it whispers. The fool rushes to speak, the wise wait to understand. The fool reacts, the wise observe. When you learn to speak less, you start hearing more. The tone behind their words, the fear behind their pride, the weakness behind their arrogance. And once you see clearly, no one can deceive you again. But silence isn't just about withholding words. It's about mastering reaction. When you pause before responding, you create space. In that space, power gathers. It's where you decide not to be ruled by impulse. Most people speak to prove they exist. The Stoic speaks only when truth requires it. The rest of the time, he watches. I remember an old mentor of mine, a quiet man who rarely interrupted, rarely explained. When others argued, he simply smiled. When provoked, he said nothing. And yet, his silence carried more weight than their shouting ever could. I once asked him why he never defended himself when others misjudged him. He said, "A man at peace doesn't argue with storms. It took me years to understand. He wasn't weak, he was disciplined. He didn't need to prove truth because he was living it." Silence, when guided by reason, becomes a mirror. It reflects others' intentions back to them. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't react, their own reflection unsettles them. When someone lies and you respond with calm, their falsehood echoes louder in the quiet. That's why silence is feared. It exposes what noise tries to hide. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." That's not just moral instruction, it's strategy. Every unnecessary word weakens your position. Every emotional reply feeds their control. The Stoic understands that silence isn't emptiness, it's focus. It's the refusal to waste energy on what doesn't align with reason. The world teaches you to speak up, to respond to everything, to defend every move. But wisdom teaches the opposite. Not everything deserves your explanation. Not every accusation needs a counter-argument. The one who can stay quiet in misunderstanding possesses a power most people will never know, because silence terrifies those who depend on your reaction to validate their chaos. There's a story of a philosopher in the Roman Senate accused of disloyalty. As the crowd shouted insults, he said nothing. His accuser grew angrier, mistaking calm for guilt. When finally asked to defend himself, the philosopher replied, "If the truth depends on noise, then reason no longer has a place in Rome." The crowd fell silent, because truth, when calm, always outlasts the uproar. That's what you must remember in your own life. People will try to pull words out of you, arguments, explanations, defenses, but your value isn't in what you say, it's in what you choose not to say. The moment you stop needing to prove yourself, you step into real freedom. You begin to conserve your strength for things that actually matter. So, how do you cultivate this kind of silence? First, learn to observe before you speak. Let the first few moments of every conversation belong to listening. You'll be surprised at how much people reveal when you stop rushing to fill the silence. Second, don't fear being misunderstood. You're not responsible for correcting every false perception. As Epictetus said, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not make excuses about what is said of you, but answer, "He does not know my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these." That's the Stoic's calm, a kind of humor in the face of misjudgment. And third, use silence as discipline. not distance. Don't withdraw from the world. Engage with it on your terms. Choose your words the way a warrior chooses his strikes, few, deliberate, and precise. Because silence without reason is emptiness. But silence guided by clarity becomes influence. In time, this practice transforms you. You start to see that the less you speak, the more people listen when you do. Your presence begins to carry gravity, and those who once tested your composure begin to feel it. They can't pull you into noise anymore. They can't use emotion as leverage. Your calm becomes contagious, your restraint undeniable. The Stoics called this inner economy, the discipline of spending your energy wisely. Every word, every reaction, every moment of attention is a currency. Spend it only on what enriches your character. Let fools exhaust themselves in noise. You stay steady, you stay observing, you stay free. Seneca warned, "Speech is the mirror of the soul. As a man speaks, so is he." But what he didn't need to add was this: silence reveals even more. Because when you no longer rush to fill every empty space, your strength begins to speak for you. So as you walk forward from here, remember this truth. Calm is not a pause before action. It is the foundation of every action worth taking. Speak less, observe more. Let your silence unsettle those who seek your weakness and inspire those who recognize your strength. And when the world grows loud again, when chaos calls your name and demands an answer, do what the Stoics have always done. Stand firm, breathe deep, and let your silence speak for you. Advancing further into the journey, this is where detachment becomes your highest form of strength. Not the kind born of coldness or pride, but the kind born of understanding, of seeing things as they are, not as your emotions paint them to be. Detachment is not distance. It is clarity. It is the discipline of staying calm in the face of storms that used to consume you. Picture this. Someone throws a stone into a river. For a moment, the water ripples, disturbed, but soon the surface returns to stillness. The river doesn't chase the stone. It flows on. That's what detachment feels like. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. The ability to let what doesn't belong to you drift away without reaching for it again. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Those words are a compass for anyone trying to live freely. Because once you understand that peace is not something you find in others, but something you maintain within yourself, the world loses its power to disturb you. You begin to see every interaction differently, not as something to control, but as something to witness. We live in a time where everyone reacts to everything. Every comment, every glance, every silence becomes a battlefield. But a Stoic learns to step away from that chaos. Detachment isn't indifference, it's intelligence. It's the realization that not every fight deserves your energy, not every insult deserves your voice, and not every loss deserves your despair. You stop chasing understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop demanding fairness from a world that has never been fair. And in that moment, you begin to taste real freedom. I once knew a man who lost everything: his job, his relationship, even the friends who swore they'd stand by him. For weeks, he fought to fix it all, explaining, pleading, apologizing for things beyond his control. But nothing changed. One night, he sat in silence for hours, staring out the window. The next morning, he spoke one sentence that stayed with me ever since. I realized the fire was burning because I kept feeding it. From that day on, he stopped trying to control the uncontrollable. He didn't become bitter, he became still. He stopped demanding closure from others and created it within himself. That's detachment. It's not giving up, it's growing up. Seneca taught that no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. To detach is to stop fearing adversity and start using it as your teacher. Pain is no longer an enemy, it's information. Betrayal is no longer a wound, it's revelation. Loss is no longer punishment, it's purification. When you view the world through this lens, you stop clinging to outcomes because you understand that everything, even the difficult, has a purpose. Detachment means observing your emotions without becoming them. When anger rises, you see it, you name it, you let it pass. When sadness knocks, you open the door, acknowledge it, and watch it leave. You stop resisting what you feel, and in doing so, you stop being ruled by it. The Stoics believed the mind should be like a calm sea, deep enough to contain emotion, but never so shallow that the winds of life can stir it into chaos. But don't mistake this calm for passivity. Detachment is not apathy, it's precision. It allows you to act with reason rather than reaction. When insulted, you don't lash out, you measure your response. When tested, you don't break, you adapt. When abandoned, you don't beg, you breathe. Because a mind anchored in reason can't be moved by the tides of emotion. Think of a candle in the wind. The untrained mind flickers wildly with every gust, its flame shrinking, struggling to survive. But the mind grounded in detachment burns steady even as the wind howls. It's not that the wind disappears, it's that the flame no longer fears it. I remember a woman I once met during a time of great personal loss. She had every reason to crumble, betrayal, public humiliation, everything she had built reduced to dust. But when I spoke to her, she was calm, not numb, just centered. Everything external is borrowed, she said. When life takes it back, I simply say, thank you for the time I had it. That's detachment at its purest, a graceful acceptance of impermanence. Epictetus told his students, when you kiss your child, say to yourself, tomorrow he may die. Not to be cruel, but to remind them that everything you love is temporary. The Stoics didn't avoid attachment to avoid pain. They practiced detachment to love more purely. When you no longer cling out of fear, you begin to love without conditions. You care because you choose to, not because you need to. You give without anxiety, and you let go without hatred. That's freedom. So how do you live with this kind of clarity? Begin with acceptance. Accept that the world will never be entirely in your control, and it doesn't need to be. Accept that some people will never apologize, and you don't need them to. Accept that things will end before you're ready, and still you will endure. Each acceptance is a step away from chaos and a step toward peace. Next, practice presence. Detachment thrives in the now. You can't master it while chasing the past or fearing the future. Be fully where your feet are. Listen when you listen. Work when you work. Feel what you feel. Don't flee from discomfort. Study it. Let every moment, pleasant or painful, teach you how to remain steady in your center. And finally, remember this truth. The world belongs to those who can stay calm while everyone else loses control. Because calmness is not emptiness, it's command. It's the highest form of strength a person can possess. The Stoics believed that the universe follows its own order, what we call fate. And our only duty is to align with that order, not resist it. When you do, life stops feeling like a series of battles and starts feeling like a rhythm you can flow with. You move not as a victim of circumstance, but as a partner of reason. So, let go of what you can't hold. Release the need to be right, to be understood, to be in control. Stand still in your own presence, because when you stop clinging to what must eventually pass, you gain everything that cannot be taken: your peace, your clarity, your strength. And when the world comes again with its storms, you will not fight the wind. You will let it pass through you. You will walk through it untouched, unchanged, unshaken. For this is the secret the Stoics lived by: the less you cling, the less you fear to lose, and the one who fears nothing cannot be controlled. From here, the path turns toward the people around you, the ones who stand beside you now, and the ones who once did. After learning to master yourself, the next lesson is to choose your circle with the same care you give your thoughts. Because peace isn't built in isolation. It's maintained by the company you keep. You can walk alone and still be strong, but even a Stoic knows that no man thrives entirely in solitude. We rise by standing with those who sharpen us, not those who drain us. Picture yourself as a traveler on a long road. Around you, others walk. Some carry torches, lighting the way ahead, while others carry smoke, clouding your vision. The wise traveler learns the difference. He doesn't resent those who slow him down, but he no longer walks at their pace. He nods, wishes them well, and continues on. That's the quiet art of choosing your circle, not through judgment, but through alignment. Seneca once wrote, "Associate only with those who make you a better man." It's simple advice, but it can take a lifetime to live by. Because the moment you start walking differently, you realize that not everyone around you was there for your growth. Some were there for your silence, your compliance, your smaller version. And when that version begins to fade, so do they. The Stoic doesn't chase their return. He thanks them for their role and lets time close the door. I remember a man I knew years ago, Victor. He was gifted, sharp, and ambitious, but easily swayed by the wrong voices. Every time he made progress, someone near him would whisper doubt into his ear. "Slow down," they'd say. "You're changing too much." And little by little, he did slow down. His confidence faded under the weight of others' comfort. One day, I asked him, "Why do you let them pull you backward?" He sighed and said, "Because I don't want to lose them." That was his mistake. He didn't see that he already had. He had lost himself first. There comes a point in life when you must choose peace or approval. You can't have both. People who fear their own growth will always resist yours. They'll disguise it as concern, loyalty, or humility, but their energy will betray their words. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius surrounded himself with philosophers who challenged his mind, not flatterers who praised his crown. He wrote, "If someone can show me I am wrong, I will change. But if they only echo my errors, they are of no use to me." That is wisdom in practice, valuing truth over comfort, growth over agreement. The company you keep shapes the rhythm of your mind. Walk with those who complain, and your thoughts begin to shrink. Walk with those who observe, and you learn silence. Walk with those who discipline themselves, and your own standards rise without a word being spoken. You become what you tolerate, and you reflect what you surround yourself with. The Stoic doesn't seek perfect companions. He seeks honest ones, people who can tell him when he strays from virtue, but never out of envy, only out of respect. This doesn't mean shutting the world out or living with suspicion. It means learning the difference between connection and attachment. Connection uplifts you. Attachment chains you. Connection flows both ways. Attachment drains one side dry. Real friends don't need to be reminded of their loyalty. They live it quietly. They don't demand your attention when you're healing or your explanation when you grow distant. They trust the depth of your character because they've seen it under pressure. There's a story of Cato the Younger, a Roman Stoic known for his integrity. When men of politics courted him with gifts and promises hoping to win his allegiance, he refused them all. But he never insulted them. He simply said, "I cannot be owned by flattery or fear," because he knew that every relationship built on convenience eventually collapses when tested by truth. The people worth keeping are those who walk beside you when power and wealth hold no benefit for them. As you move through your own journey, remember this: energy doesn't lie. If someone's presence feels heavy, it's because they're trying to pull you where they belong. If it feels clear, it's because they're walking their own path beside you, not through you. Learn to feel the difference. Trust it more than words. The Stoics taught discernment, the ability to see beyond smiles, to sense intentions, to walk lightly among men but deeply within yourself. And when the inevitable happens, when some turn away or fade into silence, don't grieve the loss. Growth requires shedding. Trees do not mourn their fallen leaves. They let them go to make room for new life. You do the same. Let those who no longer align drift away with the seasons. Because what remains after letting go is purer, stronger, and true. In my own life, I've found that the fewer people I explain myself to, the freer I become. The ones meant to stay understand without explanation. They sense your silence and don't mistake it for distance. They feel your peace and don't take it personally. They don't compete with your growth. They're inspired by it. And that kind of bond, rare as it is, will carry you further than 1,000 surface-level connections ever could. So, take inventory of your circle. Ask yourself who feeds your peace and who feeds your doubt. Who challenges your mind and who challenges your patience. The answer will reveal who belongs. And when you find the few who make you better, protect that connection like sacred ground. Because in a world where most seek validation, walking with those who seek virtue is a kind of quiet rebellion. Seneca said, "Choose someone whose way of life, not words, you admire. That's the final filter. Watch how people live when no one is watching. You'll know who is real. You'll know who is yours." The Stoic path was never meant to be walked alone, but it was meant to be walked intentionally. Stand with the wise, walk with the disciplined, learn from the honest. And as your circle becomes smaller, don't mistake it for loneliness. It's refinement. For what's forged in solitude and shared with the right few becomes unbreakable. And as the road continues, you'll find yourself surrounded by those who don't just understand your silence, they speak it too. Those who don't just watch your strength, they share it. And from that shared strength, a new kind of power begins to rise, the kind that no manipulation, no envy, no falsehood can touch. At this stage, the path turns inward once more, to the place where confidence is born, tested, and too often handed away. After learning to guard your circle, you now face a deeper challenge, learning to trust your own reason above the noise of the crowd. Because no fortress, no silence, no clarity will last if you still need the world to tell you that you're right. Now, imagine standing at a crossroads. The people around you point in every direction, each convinced they know the way. Some sound wise, others loud. You can feel the pressure rising, the weight of their opinions pressing on your chest. But somewhere underneath the noise, there's a voice you almost forgot. Your own. It doesn't shout. It waits. That is the voice you must learn to hear again. The Stoics called it reason, the inner guide that stays steady while the world sways. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look." That's not poetry, it's a map. He meant that self-trust isn't arrogance. It's the alignment between your mind and your principles. It's knowing that even if everyone else disagrees, truth remains truth. The wise man does not measure his conviction by how many agree with him, but by how deeply it aligns with reason. There's a story about an old philosopher who stood before a crowd that mocked his teachings. They shouted, jeered, tried to shake his calm. When asked why he didn't respond, he said, "If they all spoke the same, it would not make them right. If I stand alone in truth, it does not make me wrong." The crowd quieted, not out of respect, but out of confusion. They could not comprehend a man who didn't need their approval to stand firm. That's what true confidence looks like. Not pride, not defiance, clarity. The unshakable peace of someone who has tested their thoughts against reason and found them sound. Most people mistake confidence for noise, for bravado, certainty, or dominance, but the Stoics knew better. Real confidence is quiet because it is built on evidence, not ego. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom here doesn't mean rebellion against others. It means liberation from the need to please them. The moment you stop seeking validation, you stop being easily manipulated. That's why the manipulator attacks your confidence first. They know if they can make you question yourself, they don't have to defeat you. You'll defeat yourself. I once knew a young architect, brilliant, disciplined, but constantly seeking approval. Every design he created had to be praised before he believed it was good. One day, after a harsh critique from a client, he tore up weeks of work in frustration. When I saw him later, I asked, "Did their words make your work worse, or did your doubt do that?" He looked down and said, "Maybe both." That was the turning point, because the moment you realize that other people's opinions only hold as much weight as you give them, the chains begin to fall. The Stoics taught that reason is your highest authority. It is the voice that asks, "What is within my control?" and what aligns with virtue. Everything else is noise. When you follow reason, you can stand calmly in contradiction, because your worth no longer rises and falls with agreement. You begin to move with intention instead of insecurity. But trusting yourself doesn't mean you become stubborn or closed-minded. The Stoic remains humble, ready to learn, but never ready to beg for certainty. Epictetus said, "If someone can show me I am mistaken, I will gladly change, for I seek truth, not to be right." That's the balance. Confidence rooted in reason welcomes correction but resists confusion. It listens deeply but chooses deliberately. So how do you build this kind of inner trust? Start by learning the difference between reaction and reflection. Reaction is fast. It's survival. Reflection is deliberate. It's mastery. When someone questions your choices, don't rush to defend them. Ask yourself instead, is their perspective true, or does it only reflect their fear? If it's true, adapt with gratitude. If it's not, let it pass like smoke in the wind. Next, keep your promises to yourself. Nothing destroys confidence faster than self-betrayal. Every time you say you'll do something and don't, your mind learns not to trust your own word. The Stoics believed that self-trust is built the same way as trust in others, through consistency. Wake when you said you would. Finish what you start. Speak only what you intend to honor. Over time, you'll notice something change. you'll start believing yourself again. And finally, practice solitude, not as escape, but as alignment. Spend time in stillness. Strip away the noise of opinions, and you'll start hearing what you actually think. You'll realize that the guidance you've been searching for has always lived within you. It just needed quiet to speak. Marcus used solitude as counsel. Every night he wrote to himself, dissecting his own flaws, refining his reasoning, shaping his will. You can do the same. Solitude doesn't isolate the wise, it sharpens them. As you grow in this clarity, you'll start to feel a new kind of calm. The kind that doesn't need to argue, the kind that doesn't crave reassurance. When you trust yourself, you no longer beg for direction. You choose your course and walk it. You'll notice that your words become fewer, but your presence becomes stronger. Because confidence isn't about proving, it's about knowing. And here's the irony. When you no longer need others to validate your path, people begin to trust you more. They sense your steadiness, your composure, your alignment. They feel safe in your clarity, even if they don't understand it. That's what the Stoics called natural authority, the influence that comes not from control, but from calm. So, when you face your next decision, when the world demands your explanation, pause. Ask yourself, what does reason say? Not fear, not pride. Reason. If it aligns with truth, stand by it, even if you stand alone. The crowd changes with every season, but your integrity must remain constant. Remember this, the most dangerous thing you can give away is your own judgment. Once you start living for applause, you forget how to listen to your conscience. But when you reclaim that voice, when you let reason, not reaction, be your guide, you become untouchable. Because the man who trusts himself no longer fears being misunderstood. And the one who walks in truth, even alone, never truly walks in darkness. From here, the journey turns toward mastery, the mastery of response. After learning to trust your own reason, the next step is to control what follows it, your reaction. Because no matter how strong your fortress, no matter how sharp your mind, it takes only one reckless word, one moment of rage, one lapse in composure to undo it all. The Stoics knew this truth well. It's not the event that breaks you, it's how you respond to it. Now imagine this, a fire burning bright in the open wind. Every gust threatens to scatter its flame, to consume it. Yet when the fire is contained, disciplined, it becomes a force of warmth and light. But left untamed, it destroys everything in its path. That's how emotion works. It isn't your enemy, it's energy. But energy without direction becomes chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." What he meant was simple yet difficult to live by. The world will provoke you endlessly. People will insult, deceive, and disappoint you. Circumstances will twist beyond reason, but none of it determines your peace unless you hand it over. The Stoic doesn't suppress emotion, he governs it. The ability to pause, to hold that split second between stimulus and response, is what separates the wise from the impulsive. In that brief pause, you decide the kind of person you will be. When anger rises, you can breathe instead of lash out. When fear whispers, you can act instead of freeze. When pride calls, you can listen instead of argue. That moment, that single heartbeat of stillness, is where mastery is forged. I remember once watching a friend, Elias, handle an ambush of words that would have broken most people. He was accused falsely, insulted publicly, and yet he didn't flinch. He didn't defend himself, didn't raise his voice. He just stood there, calm, clear, deliberate. When it was his turn to speak, he said only, "If the truth depends on shouting, then it was never true to begin with." The room fell silent. His restraint did what anger never could. It revealed strength without aggression. Seneca warned, "Anger, if not restrained, is often more harmful than the injury that provokes it." How many times have we burned bridges, shattered trust, or lost dignity because we reacted too quickly? The Stoics didn't tell us to feel nothing. They taught us to feel deeply and wisely. Anger can teach you boundaries, but only if it's bridled by reason. Pain can teach you endurance, but only if you stop trying to escape it. The key is transformation, not suppression. Every day offers a test. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A friend betrays your confidence. A colleague takes credit for your work. These are the small fires the universe sends, not to destroy you, but to train you. The Stoics saw these moments as opportunities for practice. Each time you choose patience over impulse, silence over reaction, observation over judgment, you strengthen the muscle of composure. Over time, this becomes your default, not indifference, but disciplined calm. Epictetus compared the wise man to an athlete in training. "Difficulties show what men are," he said. "Adversity introduces a man to himself." You can't learn self-control in comfort. It's forged in the moments when everything in you wants to explode, but reason whispers, "Wait." The man who learns to hold that space becomes unbreakable, not because life stops testing him, but because he stops being ruled by it. Think of the people who've tried to provoke you, the ones who knew your buttons and pressed them for pleasure. Their power never came from their words, it came from your reaction. The moment you learn to observe instead of react, you flip the balance. Suddenly they lose control because their weapon, your emotion, is gone. Calm disarms chaos faster than anger ever could. But mastering response isn't only about others. It's about the storms inside you, the disappointment you feel when life doesn't go as planned, the frustration when effort doesn't bring reward, the sorrow of watching something beautiful end. These are the emotional earthquakes that shake your foundation. The Stoic endures them not by pretending they don't hurt, but by remembering that pain, like everything else, is temporary. Marcus wrote to himself during times of war, "If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." Simple words, but behind them lies the discipline of a man who led armies while losing friends, family, and health. He didn't mean cold indifference, he meant active strength, the kind that accepts pain as part of the path. You can endure almost anything once you stop telling yourself you can't. A soldier once told me the secret to his composure in battle. "I don't wait for calm," he said. "I carry it with me." That's the essence of Stoic resilience. Calm isn't a destination, it's equipment. You bring it into every situation, knowing the storm is coming, knowing the noise will rise. And when it does, you breathe, assess, and act, not from emotion, but from clarity. So how do you begin mastering your response? First, anticipate. Each morning, remind yourself that someone will irritate you, something will go wrong, and plans will shift. Marcus did this daily. It was his mental armor. By expecting difficulty, you remove its surprise. And when life doesn't shock you, it can't shake you. Second, pause before responding. That pause isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's where you reclaim control. In that silence, ask, is this worth my peace? Does this align with my values? Most of the time, you'll find that it doesn't. Walk away, not because you're above it, but because you've outgrown it. And third, act only when calm. A Stoic never acts at the height of emotion. He lets the wave pass before making decisions. He knows that time, not impulse, clarifies truth. As Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. When you live this way, something remarkable happens. The same situations that once enraged you become exercises in control. The same insults that once cut, you become proof of your composure. You start to see every challenge as a mirror reflecting your level of mastery. Some days, you'll fail, and that's part of the process. But each time you catch yourself before reacting, you're evolving. In time, you'll notice people treat you differently. Your calm will unsettle the impatient. Your steadiness will expose the unstable, and your silence will hold more weight than their arguments ever could. That's the quiet authority of the Stoic, the power that doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, doesn't need to prove. It simply is. So when life provokes you again, and it will, remember this: emotion is not your master, it's your messenger. Listen to it, learn from it, but never let it drive. You are not the wind that moves wildly. You are the mountain that endures it, and as the storms keep coming, you'll find yourself standing taller each time, not untouched, but undisturbed. Because the one who commands his response commands his destiny. And when you reach that level of calm, even chaos begins to respect your silence. At this stage, the lesson turns toward imitation, the silent shadow that follows strength wherever it walks. When you master yourself, when you stop reacting, when your calm becomes consistent, you'll notice something strange. People begin to mirror you, some out of admiration, others out of envy. They copy your tone, your habits, even your silence. And in their imitation, they reveal something profound. They cannot control what they do not understand, so they try to become it instead. It begins quietly. You take a new path, and they follow. You express an idea, and suddenly they echo it back as their own. At first, it feels flattering, then unsettling. You realize they're not walking beside you. They're tracing your steps, afraid to carve their own. That's when you understand what Seneca meant when he said, "Character, not imitation, defines a man." Because imitation is a mask, a reflection without soul. No matter how perfectly it copies the surface, it can never duplicate the essence beneath. The Stoics believed that each person's virtue is unique, an expression of reason shaped by experience. Trying to replicate another's path is like wearing armor that doesn't fit. It looks impressive until the first strike. Those who copy are not seeking growth, they're seeking shortcuts. They think if they repeat your actions, they'll inherit your strength. But strength isn't in the act. It's in the discipline that led to it. I once knew a scholar named Lucian, brilliant but insecure. Every time he met someone who inspired him, he'd start mimicking their style, their tone, even their mannerisms. For a while, people praised him. He's adaptable, they said. But over time, something felt off. You could see it in his eyes, the conflict between his borrowed voice and his silent one. One day, after a lecture, he confessed, "I don't know who I am when I'm not performing." That's the danger of imitation. It empties you from within, replacing authenticity with applause. Epictetus warned, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, stop copying others to appear wise. True growth demands the courage to look unpolished while discovering your own form of excellence. You will be misunderstood, you will be doubted, but it's far better to be disliked for your truth than praised for your imitation. Think of the sun and its shadow. The shadow can mimic every move, every angle, every motion, but it will always be behind. Always dependent, always unable to shine on its own. Those who copy are shadows. And when you learn this, you stop resenting them. You start to see them for what they are, proof that your light exists. The Stoics didn't seek originality in the way we understand it today. They sought authenticity, living in harmony with reason, aligned with virtue, unshaken by public opinion. That's what made their presence unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius didn't try to sound like Seneca. Seneca didn't try to speak like Epictetus. Each embodied the same philosophy through their own nature. That's why their words still echo centuries later, because truth expressed through authenticity doesn't age. You, too, must choose this path. When others mimic your silence, your restraint, your composure, don't react with bitterness. Don't try to compete for ownership of what cannot be stolen. Let them copy. Let them repeat your words and trace your manner. Their imitation will expose their emptiness far more loudly than your defense ever could. The Stoic doesn't argue with imitation. He surpasses it by continuing to evolve. One of the greatest freedoms comes when you stop trying to protect your originality and simply keep growing, because the imitator can only copy who you were. The moment you change, they lose their map. And that's when you realize the truth. Your evolution is your escape. They can steal your image, but they can never steal your becoming. Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom, in this sense, isn't just from tyranny or fear, it's from imitation. It's the ability to live so deeply in alignment with reason that you no longer crave recognition or replication. You become the river that flows on, while others try to capture your reflection in still water. And no matter how clearly they see it, the reflection never moves with them. I've seen people spend years chasing approval from those who borrowed their ideas. They exhaust themselves, proving ownership of what should never have been defended. But a Stoic knows that virtue doesn't require validation. You don't need to prove you were first. The truth will always reveal itself through time, because imitation can't sustain itself. It burns out when there's nothing real to feed on. So when you encounter imitation, whether it's your words, your work, or your way of life, smile. That's your confirmation that you've built something worth copying. And when they follow, take it as a reminder. Keep moving, keep changing, keep deepening. Because the moment you stand still to argue with imitation, you become the very thing you rise above. There's a story of an old craftsman who was once accused of stealing his own design. His apprentice had replicated his work and claimed it as his own masterpiece. When confronted, the craftsman simply said, "Let him have it. I'll create again." That's the Stoic way. The world can take what you've done, but it cannot touch the hands, the mind, or the discipline that made it possible. That's the power they'll never understand. In the end, imitation always reveals two truths: the insecurity of the imitator and the mastery of the original. The imitator copies because he fears he has nothing of his own. The master keeps creating because he knows he doesn't need to prove what's already evident. So don't waste time defending what's already yours by nature. Don't waste energy resenting those who can only walk in your shadow. Let them follow, let them echo, let them fade. You are not here to compete with reflections. You are here to embody substance. And when they try to match your steps, remember this: they're chasing what you've already outgrown. Keep evolving, and their imitation will always be too late. Because the truest kind of power doesn't come from being copied. It comes from becoming someone no one else can be. As we arrive at the final stretch of this path, something profound begins to unfold. You've walked through the storms, faced deceit, imitation, and provocation. You've rebuilt yourself from silence, shaped your peace through clarity, and learned to stand alone without feeling lonely. But there is one final test. the one that exposes the difference between those who speak of strength and those who live it. It comes not when people challenge you, but when they secretly hope for your failure. Now, imagine this. You've been climbing in silence for years. Step by step, you've risen beyond the reach of gossip, manipulation, and envy. You don't boast. You don't beg for applause. You simply move. But somewhere behind you, there are eyes watching, not with admiration, but with quiet resentment. They nod when you win, but in the corners of their hearts, they whisper, "Fall." They want your strength to stumble so they can feel safe in their weakness again. This is one of life's darker realities. Not everyone who claps is on your side. Some clap to count the seconds before you fall. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." The Stoic doesn't waste time worrying about who's waiting for his failure. He focuses on what he can build while they wait. He knows that true success isn't about defeating others. It's about rising beyond the need to prove. Those who hope for your downfall reveal more about their unrest than about your ascent. Their resentment is not born from your arrogance. It's born from your progress. There's a certain silence that follows growth, the kind that makes others uneasy. Because when you evolve, you remind people that they've chosen to remain the same. And rather than face that truth, many will turn against you. They'll doubt you, mock your changes, or pretend to support you while secretly waiting for you to crumble. But a Stoic doesn't fight their whispers. He uses them as fuel. He lets their doubt become the wind beneath his discipline. I remember a man named Cassius, a quiet craftsman who built his reputation from nothing. For years, no one noticed his effort. But when he finally succeeded, when his work began to shine, something strange happened. Friends grew distant. Old allies began to speak with subtle condescension. "He's changed," they said. "He's not the same anymore." Cassius told me once, "They're right. I have changed. I've outgrown their comfort." That was the moment he understood. Success isolates the undisciplined, not because you reject them, but because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Those who secretly root for your failure are slaves to craving, the craving for comparison, for validation, for superiority. But envy has a cruel flaw. It eats only its host. A Stoic sees this and refuses to return the poison. He does not wish them harm, he simply outgrows their reach. The truth is, life will always test your composure at the height of your climb, not when you're falling, but when you're winning. Because success is a mirror. It reflects the insecurities of those who refuse to climb. And when you rise quietly, you expose those who need noise to feel powerful. They will doubt your intentions, misinterpret your silence, and try to stain what they cannot touch. But your job isn't to explain yourself, it's to continue. Epictetus said, "If someone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself but answer, 'He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned only these.'" That's the humor of the wise. You stop taking things personally when you realize that others' judgments are simply reflections of their own turmoil. When people wish for your downfall, it's rarely about hatred. It's about their need to feel relevant. So how do you endure when surrounded by hidden resentment? You endure by shifting your focus inward. Don't waste your strength proving your innocence or defending your climb. Every minute spent responding to envy is a minute stolen from your purpose. Instead, build deeper roots. Like the oak that stands through centuries of storms, you grow not by shouting, but by anchoring yourself in virtue. Let your integrity become the quiet proof of your character. Let time become your advocate. When they wait for your failure, rise differently, in silence, in peace, in self-mastery. Success, in the Stoic sense, isn't about wealth or applause. It's about consistency. It's about doing what aligns with reason, day after day, whether the crowd cheers or sneers, because their noise changes nothing. The sun doesn't argue with those who prefer the shade. It simply keeps rising. There's a deeper beauty in being doubted and continuing anyway. Each silent victory is a step toward unshakable confidence, the kind that no insult, no rumor, no betrayal can break. You stop fearing failure because you realize it's not failure that destroys, it's the fear of it. Once you understand that every setback refines you, every doubt humbles you, and every envy strengthens your focus, you stop fighting shadows. You let them talk, and you work. Marcus once reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's the essence of this lesson. Don't argue with envy. Don't prove your worth. Don't explain your purpose. Live it. The longer you stand firm, the quieter your doubters become. Because nothing confuses those waiting for your collapse more than the sight of you thriving without their approval. When you stay steady in this way, you'll notice something miraculous. Your silence begins to speak. It tells the world that your foundation is not built on validation. It's built on virtue. It's built on hours of unseen effort, on restraint when anger called, on humility when pride tempted. The Stoic doesn't rise to destroy his enemies. He rises to master himself. And in doing so, his very existence becomes a lesson to those who tried to break him. So let them wait. Let them whisper. Let them predict your downfall. While they feed on doubt, you'll be feeding your discipline. While they study your steps, you'll already be walking a new path. Because you were never climbing to impress them, you were climbing to meet yourself. And when the day comes that you stand atop your own mountain, not triumphant, not proud, but peaceful, you'll finally understand the true victory. It's not in outshining others, it's in outlasting their noise. As the Stoic said, the reward of virtue is virtue itself. Peace needs no prize, it is the prize. And once you find it, the storms can roar, but they can't reach you. In the end, control is never lost easily. When people can no longer shape you, they turn to subtler weapons: guilt, silence, doubt. But their reach ends where your awareness begins. That's the quiet power the Stoics spoke of, the kind that needs no defense. Your calm is not weakness. It is proof that you no longer trade your peace for their approval. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. You simply stand where you are, clear and unmoved. If this message stayed with you, share your reflection below with the words "silent strength." And if you walk this path too, take a moment to stay with us. Because mastery isn't found in controlling others. Have you ever noticed the silence that follows when you stop being easy to control? The smiles fade, the tone shifts, and suddenly your peace feels like a threat to someone.